always appreciate these sessions and everyone coming out. I think what's important, I think also the organization, is we want to hear from you. What's on your mind? So if you have anything that's really burning, and even if you disagree with some things we're doing, that's also important to us also, saying, I think you're a little off track with this. That's what we want to hear. So I think it's part of us being a community of members in this organization. We're into the media stage now with obviously social media, right? So we rely on that, and we're trying to get younger folks involved that are just retiring also to try to be part of this community. So he does a wonderful job there, and your word of mouth, I think, is important. That's what we want to say, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
There's some question whether Verizon was really independent of the financial advisor that they used.
Essentially, what happens when you do a pension risk transfer is you have to appoint an independent fiduciary, and they make a recommendation. They make a recommendation about what the safest available annuity provider is. So they're supposed to choose somebody who's a safe and secure steward for the plan. Well, in the case of the recent transaction in 2024, Verizon hired State Street Global Advisors to be the independent fiduciary. And when we did some digging into their public statements, we found out, well, State Street Global Advisors owns more than $2 billion in Prudential's common stock, $500 million in RGA's common stock, and $7.7 billion in Verizon common stock. So we basically said, you can't possibly claim to be independent if you control billions. And they came back and said in their papers, well, we don't actually own the stock, we own it on behalf of our clients. But guess who votes at the proxy meetings? Guess who has the ability to weigh in on all these big corporate decisions? It's, it's State Street Global Advisors. So that's one of the things that's front and center in this case, which is different than the other case, because we're focusing on breach of fiduciary duty and self-dealing.
Well, I had a great career. They gave me my life. I met my husband there. My husband was in the Brooklyn counterpart to where I worked. We were computer techs. And I met him there, and he took early retirement in '94. He got the 6 and 6. I get half his pension now. He passed away. It'll be 12 years today. But I had a great life with him. But he used to be very involved in the court cases, and he used to always tell me. And I'm actually here today to honor him, and I'm going to get more involved for him, actually, and for me. But I really definitely want to get more involved with the BellTel Association. The question I had is with the current administration's determination to tear down all the watchdog agencies, do you have any special strategies to fight them?
Great question. Obviously, it's a big concern, particularly at the Department of Labor, where we've lost very, very big time allies. But I think that the solution legislatively now is at the state level, and the states are taking back power. And so we're going to focus more and more on introducing state legislation to replace the federal protections that were lost. We're still going to try to amend ERISA, but there's no question that the gutting of federal agencies is going to hurt and make it a little bit harder. I'm particularly concerned about the Department of Labor, because the people that they want to bring in there now just don't believe that there's any right to sue for anything done by a pension plan. They think it should be done by the plan sponsors. They think they're more experienced than any law firm could possibly be, and they want to essentially prohibit the practice. So it is a big concern, but we've got our eye on the ball. And what I like to tell people is, we live in a world of pendulums, and pendulums swing. And the further they swing one way, the further they're going to swing back. So it's just a matter of being patient, being on the ball, and pushing where you have opportunity. And I think our biggest opportunity now is at the state level.
My question is, suppose if you worked in New York and let's say I moved to one of those states, am I covered in that at that point, or do I take my New York pension, well now it's Prudential, and not get covered?
Basically, ERISA is a federal law, signed into law by Gerald Ford in 1974. But ERISA provides uniform protections to pensioners, all sorts of, and it's all the same for everybody. Once you're kicked out of your pension plan, you default to non-uniform state laws. And the state of residence, right, where you reside at the time of the insolvency or the impairment of the insurance company that's supposed to make your payments, That's the state law that's gonna govern your rights. And state laws have voluntary guarantee associations, and the coverage amounts range from 240,000 to 500,000. 240,000 is California, because they have this weird statute that says it's 300,000, but you only get 80% of the present value. So for your purposes, it's 240,000. But that's what really matters. So you do have to look at this, and that's one of the things I feel is very unfair for retirees. They move. Retirees move to be with family. And it's a per individual, per lifetime cap. So if you have another Prudential Insurance Company of America life insurance policy or annuity, and that company gets into trouble, your cap amount is per individual, per lifetime, no matter how many policies you have.
As Eddie says, the difference between what we had under ERISA and a state guaranteed pension, under ERISA, I think now, if your pension plan went insolvent, you would be guaranteed up to $80,000 a year for the next 150 years, lifetime. Under certain states, there's a cap, okay? New York State, we're one of the highest, we are the highest, $500,000. But if you're getting a $50,000 a year pension, 10 years, you've reached your cap. You'll not get another penny. So that was a big thing we lost under federal protection of ERISA. So it all depends on what state you live in. I think out in the Midwest, there's states like Missouri and Arkansas, their limit's 250,000. So if you get a $50,000 a year pension and you reside in those states, 5 years, bye-bye, no more. So that's the real critical downside to that. Did I answer that question properly, Tom?
You did. I just want to make one clarification. The PBGC that takes over a plan provides benefits based on your age. So what Tommy said before is accurate if you're 65 years of age. If you're 75, that amount goes up dramatically. So PBGC provides more than 250,000 in annual benefits for someone who's 75. 65, it's more like 80,000. But all is a function of your age when the pension plan gets taken over. So it's significantly different, and it could be even worse.
Hi, I'm Pat DiPietro. I started in 1970, working for the company, and they took me down to 811 10th Avenue to go to splicing school, like Tom. I was a splicer downtown Manhattan, and after we finished splicing school, we all marched to the World Trade Center, where I worked for the next 5-6 years. And I saw it go up, I saw it come down, and I saw it go up again. So, and I worked there. I'm a 9/11, like, I don't know if you call me a survivor, but I was a worker there, so I'm on the 9/11 thing. But it was a great job. And later on, after my splicing, I was a manager, Southern Manhattan down in Broad Street, and I went over to Empire City Subway, which was a really nice move for me. And it was so funny talking about lead cables. I was a quality manager there, and I went to the Verizon management and I says, guys are cutting all these cables. We need to get them out of the manholes because we can't get the other tenants. That was another thing. ECS had 75, 80 tenants you don't even know about. And they were bringing fiber cables, and fiber is not placed like lead cables. They got to come out of the truck in an environment. They got to be spliced, put back in a hole with coils. You know what these manholes look like? You have no idea. You know how spaghetti all in one hole.
I just want to go to something that Pat brought up. There's a law that was signed by Governor Kathy Hochul of New York called the 9/11 Notice Act. And what that says is if you were an employer who had staff who was assigned to work down there, that you have an opportunity and a right to be covered by the federal 9/11 Act. And that means healthcare and compensation. And if you have a friend or loved one who meets that criteria and may have already passed on, their family might be eligible for compensation.
But you know, I did have one concern, and Counselor, I have to go to you on this. I was, you know, with all this pension stuff that came out, I was wondering why Verizon didn't come back and say the remaining pensions we're gonna buy out. Was that ever an issue? Sir?
Well, no, it's a really good question. I mean, look, most people don't understand how much pensions cost employers. They could have offered to buy it out from the pensioners, but they didn't because they felt it would be easier for them to transfer the assets from the pension plan, get off risk, don't have to pay PBGC premiums anymore, and don't have to make their minimum required contributions, which are set under ERISA. And that's the big thing that they're trying to get out of. So if they bought, you know, because they have to contribute a lot of money every year and it's set by statute. So that's the big thing they're trying to get away with. But there would be nothing to prevent them from buying out the pension. They could have offered a lump sum option to everybody. They have to do it uniformly under ERISA, but they could have. But they chose instead to do a deal with one of their cronies. They require fixed premiums. Everybody contributes per individual. I think it's at $105 per individual plan participant. Now, it's been going up over the years. But if the plan falls below a certain funded status, they're subject to variable rate premiums as well. And that gets set by a complicated calculation, but it could be hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, if for a closing statement, I have two things, okay? Number one, every one of you knows somebody that works currently for the company or is retired from the company. One gentleman, Pat, you have two sons, all right, that work for the company. Hey, send them over to me. I'd love to see them on the board of directors, you know, volunteer. And that goes for the rest of you. You know, if somebody's retired and a little bit bored and they want action, bring them to our think tank. Let them tell us what their thoughts are, because it's a collection of, you know, Bell system experience, and that's what we work on. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming, and most of all, I want to thank you for supporting each other, supporting us, because if we don't take care of ourselves, nobody else will. And I really appreciate all of your donations to the association, because without you, we couldn't do nothing. Thank you. Thank you very much.